The May 21st.
Hold on, sir, hold on, sir. I'm excited over you sometimes. I gotta
You said
make sure
ready.
you're ready before I click the button.
All right, let's push button.
Push.
Give me a thumbs up when I can bang again. Okay, the May 21st, 2025 Board of Education special meeting, which is a work session of the High County Board of Education, is hereby called to order at 8 a.m. And this is a working session discussion on our budget. And so, Dr. Miller, do you want to kick us off on, what we're looking at, or Mr. Bennett? Or how?
Sure. I'm sure, Mr. Bennett, we've gone through this several times, so we want to be able to provide the board with as much information as possible with regard to the budget and places we have taken a close look at to where we could squeeze just a little bit with the deficit approaching us and how we're going to be handling that. So, Steve, do you want to start at the very beginning?
Sure.
And work through it?
Sure. And can you presented us a proposed budget. Can we walk through the different sources and then our expenses and look at where things, where we are getting less inflows of cash, and then looking at where you're proposing to cut expenses and what the percentages are as we go from the different subtotals.
Sure. Yeah, I'll give a summary if that's okay.
Thank you.
So the very first page in your well, not the first page, but the first summary page in your budget packet has revenues on one side and our general categories of expenses on the other. Of course, these two sides have to balance as they do every year. The first big number that's going to jump off the page at you is the decrease in tax revenue that we are receiving through our regular and excess levy. It is $8.788 million in decrease. Now, the next number, the $927,000 number, that's an increase, but we are a pass-through because this is the first year that the library has their own excess levy. So that number, it has to be separated out. Do you need an extra one, Andy? I got an extra. I do.
You have two?
Sorry.
If you don't, it's okay, I'll show it to you.
don't.
That's all right.
I have one on my.
I can go make a copy.
Well, it's actually.
I got it on email, I can forward it to you.
I have one.
That's okay.
It's on.
I'll take care of it, I'm good. You guys-
That's my fault.
Hold on a second, Rick, you got your
Like the
computer.
irresponsible student.
I'm just on Kim's, I'm good. Hers is already highlighted.
Even better.
It's a used textbook.
Even better. The other two increases are, that we did receive an increase in our interest rate through West Banco, so that was helpful. The miscellaneous number is based on last year's income and revenue. So as we go through the expenses, that's going to be a little bit more of a common theme. It's going to be based on last year's with increases. Because of the decrease in tax revenue, our basic state aid went up roughly $2.5 million. The reason for that is step 9. I think we've talked briefly about, well, not briefly, we've talked at length at times about the state aid formula. Step 9 is the local share, where they calculate our state aid, and then they take 85% of our regular levy off of that total state aid, and then that ends up being what we receive from the state. So it has an inverse relationship to our taxes. Taxes go down, that number will also go down, so our state aid will go up.
So that balance, we went down by 15.53% under our local revenue. So that 15% is offset somewhat by the state aid formula,
A little bit, yeah.
but not proportionate.
No,
We were
not
looking at
proportionate.
it.
No, not proportionate in any way. But that's why, when I got the tax revenue at first, we had these conversations, the budget may go down a significant amount, and it did go down a significant amount. However, state aid did help that out a little bit. We went up a little bit for the PEI, health insurance, state aid, that's to help the employer portion, that is not the employee portion. So, because those rates went up, we got a little bit more money from the state. The other big item here that's kind of in flux is the reserve for federal and state grant. I've got it going up a little bit, but just to be honest with you, we were told by the state level just to budget everything as we have it this year. So when we budgeted 2025, it was based on 24 numbers. 2020, of course, those went up just slightly. So that's why there's a slight increase in our 2026 numbers. We don't know anything right now about the federal budget, so that is purely a guess. It's based on current year numbers. We have not been given any information as to if those will go up, down, stay the same. I don't think we're going to know anything until at least July. That's the best we can do there. So overall, our budget, which is based on the revenue, the estimated revenue went from $89.3 million down to $83.8 million, a $5.5 million decrease.
Did we originally think that was 8 million, and now we think it's 5.5?
Well, again, that's because of the tax revenue was the first piece of the puzzle, and that went down in the 8 million. So then that's why, like I said, the state aid was the proportionate share that kind of increased that. It also looks a little bit inflated too because of the increase on that excess levy for the library. It's $927,000, but we're a pass-through. We can't do anything with that. So
we're down 6.16%, but we don't know that 3.4 million, we could be back up to really 9 million upside down. We just don't know, I guess.
Well, the 3.4, that's child nutrition. That's, right now, that's kind of,
No, I'm talking about the reserve.
the 3 million? Oh, sure. Sure.
How much of that state do we, between, so it says federal/state grants. Is it, it's the federal grants that we're really unsure about.
Correct.
How much of that 3,451,000 is federal grants?
I'm gonna guess it's
Market share?
By far. Let's see, Title I is somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.5 million. Same thing with IDEA. Title II is about 400,000. I mean, right there, you've got 3.5
They
roughly.
continue to
So-
cut Title II.
Yeah, that's very true.
Steve, with that though, the 3.451 million, that does seem to be the same number as the child nutrition.
Again, that's revenue.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the child nutrition revenue. It's got to be based on the same.
And then 4.5 is what's next to the titles 1, 2, and 5.
And that's last year's budget. The current year's 4.7 because of the increase in state aid or state grants. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be probably 70. Federal share is probably going to be 75% of that. Okay. When you head over to the expenditure side is a little tougher because it's a lot of estimates. I know we've talked before that I don't have the ability to project into the future for revenues. So, when it comes, I can only look to the past. So a lot of the expenditures are based on like FY24 and current FY25 numbers. We did have a little bit of personnel shift, so I was able to shift those numbers where I could. So basically, everybody's going to take a cut, or every category is going to take a cut in some way, just to try to balance this out. A lot of it's going to be because of there were salaries built in that we know that we're not going to be able to handle now, but it was built in for just to make sure that we had enough money to cover that budget before. We're going to be run a little thinner this year. The big portions, of course, the biggest portion is always that first line, that regular and secondary education. A lot of that's going to be most of that's going to be salary. Some of it's going to be contracted services. Step 7 gets added into that category, so that covers textbooks, that covers technology. Also included in there, one thing that did go up is charter school payments. There's an estimated amount that we have to pay out to charter schools that the state has us budget. That went up by $116,000. So despite the $1.8 million decrease in estimated budget, you know, the payment to the charter schools went up by $116,000.
Can you explain that to me a little better?
Sure. So, in the middle of, we're able to now bill other counties and schools when students leave in the middle of the year. We were always able to before, but there was always an agreement between counties that we weren't going. So, for example, the state aid is based on October 1st child count. So if a child is here on October 1st, the next year we're going to get that state aid for that child. If they come in the middle of the year, or if they come from another county on October 10th, we have to pay for that child for the entire year, but we're not getting any state aid for them. These are payments for that, students that may leave our county and go into that county. So before it was always, we didn't actually know if it was a wash, but we always assumed, treasurers across the state and superintendents across the state assumed it was a wash because we traded students back and forth with Marshall and Brooke and things like that. Well, now we're, of course, we have declining enrollments. We have charter schools and virtual schools that are gaining those students, and the state estimates it out and then forces us to budget it.
Do we have money coming back to us at any point?
And not at that clip. Now, we have a little, I've probably received, I'm gonna guess somewhere in the neighborhood of 30,000 back.
Do you book an AR on that?
What's that?
Do you book an AR?
No, we don't, because we collect it within the year.
Okay.
What percentage would you say you get back based on what goes out per student?
Oh, I mean, I don't know percentage. I mean, I know that I probably received 30,000, but I have to budget, and we normally pay out around, for next year, it's 362. So, I mean, it's a large gap between the students that we're losing to virtual and that we have to pay out. So, back up to the top a little bit. You know, I didn't have any category. The only category that actually increased in budget was child nutrition, and that's due to the increase in food supplies, increase in just any supply that they need. They're the ones that are going to use the most actual supplies. So that's why they have an increase versus everybody else having a decrease.
Excuse me, Steve.
Yeah,
can I ask a
sure,
question?
sure.
I know that we don't know for a fact yet, Dr. Miller, but have you heard about how the arrangements for reimbursement from the feds for our lunches and breakfasts is going to, is that gonna change? Or is it still
We don't know
a
yet.
very arbitrary thing?
We're
don't
just
know.
waiting.
Just waiting to hear
Yep.
how that, the only reason I bring that up is because if we go back to the system that we had prior, where we officially, you know, free and reduced kids only, we're going to give that perk to, and everyone else will have to pay. We did work in a deficit mode in regards to collecting food bills, correct?
We did.
Yeah, I think it was somewhere in the $40,000 to $50,000 deficit. Was it that high? Do you remember?
It
Just-
might have been.
Might have been.
I mean, we carried a $400,000 accounts receivable that we know that it is not going to be paid.
Okay.
Yeah,
Do that again, I'm sorry.
400,000. Yeah,
It's really high.
yeah, yeah. The state will not allow us to pay, write off, or
And you cannot
we have to
deny a
just carry
child
it.
food.
No,
So
no,
No,
there are a lot of moving parts with
yeah,
that.
in my opinion, that's huge.
yeah, yeah.
Is there any, like right now, the federal government gives us grants to pay for meals for all students regardless of income level?
It's a reimbursement, yes. Right now, our county they've changed the acronyms a couple times, but,
CEP?
CEP, I think we're a CEP county because, our free and reduced, it gets up to that, I think it's 40% threshold right now.
Yes.
You know, feds are talking about raising that back up, and you're not allowed to group a whole county, and you're not allowed to group schools, and, you know.
How does that play into what you and Andy were just talking about with the
How it plays is, my conversations with Ms. Griffin were, there would only be 4 schools that would then be free and reduced. So everybody else, you would have to apply to be free and reduced. If you don't apply to be free and reduced, then we have to bill you for the cost of the meal. When we bill parents, and just to be frank, some don't pay. We don't have any teeth to back that up either, because it's, I mean, of course, we would never imply that a student couldn't eat because the bill wasn't paid. Forever, like 30 years ago, they would threaten the child couldn't graduate. That's not something that happens anymore. The only teeth that we have is to turn them into collections, in which it
We
was.
talked about that at one time.
Yeah, we talked
Several
about
years
it.
ago.
Yeah, and then it was like right as that CEP grouping was starting, and so we've just held it
haven't
on
had to
our
worry about it.
books. Yeah, we haven't had to worry about it, and
So it comes off the direct cert list, but then what people are concerned about is like, once we group them, there was a time where certain schools were CEP schools.
yep.
And then when those kids moved to another school, that school
Right.
might not be a CEP school. So
Right.
we had lots of,
That's where the biggest issues, I assume, would arise with families
Okay.
being used to one way of doing
100%.
things. Yeah.
and there's no, you don't stop feeding the kids, you still feed the kids, even if they pay their bills or didn't pay their
Yeah,
bills.
yeah. I mean, and so that's the thing that's hidden, well, not hidden, but not able to be seen in this budget, is that's expenses going out, but revenues possibly not coming in. We've actually, so child nutrition always runs in the red. It's something that when I started 14 years ago, we were probably running in the $2 million range of payments from Ohio County to the child nutrition, just to balance it out. This past year, I want to say that it was somewhere in that $1.5 million range, which is, considering 14 years ago to now, that we've decreased it by $500,000 with increase in costs, increase in salaries. It's been helpful from the revenue that we receive based on the CEP agreement. It's just, we're doing well. And not to mention the work that Ms. Griffin does, trying to figure out better ways to get that reimbursement especially for like breakfast, because it doesn't cost so much to buy breakfast food, but the reimbursement rate is higher than what we pay out. So, I mean, it's actually sort of like we're making money on breakfast.
Not really.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's going to be a tough balance if all of that goes away. Well, we're going to see our share go up significantly, which is not something that I could budget for, because
Yeah.
the feds have left us in limbo.
I mean, technically, we might need to buy less food because more kids will, without the free food, like, I know, just speaking personally, like, my kids are like, they just feed us at school, like, we don't need to take any food from home. So potentially, like, are we buying more now because we're a CEP county than we were before?
I mean, I think we're buying more, but I can't see that being a significant expense that I could. I mean, I could see it maybe going down some, but it's
Yeah.
not going to be something that I'm going to like, oh, well, we've got money to, do something else.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and it's gonna be brief, but just.
No,
so I
you're fine.
understand. So short of turning somebody into collections, what's our only recourse?
Yeah,
Okay.
You can't,
And I don't think we can do that either.
I
At
mean,
least I remember from before we
it
weren't
was a
allowed.
thing.
I mean, yeah, no. I think we talked about maybe hiring a company to go get, and then we receive a portion of the bill that's paid, but yeah,
But it's a hard, like, shift for the
Really
families,
hard.
because they're so used to
Yes.
Really
it
hard.
being one way. So that's,
sure.
It's not necessarily for most of them, can we pay for our kids to eat? We haven't had to, and we're not used to it, and so trying to retrain.
I think it's
people.
both. I think it's both. I mean, to be honest with you, I think it's gonna be both, so.
Back in the day, Molly, I used to buy lunch myself.
Oh, sure, I know that
I
there
mean,
is.
I took it out of my wallet and said, here's
Yeah.
for these kids' lunch.
Yeah.
And then it even got to the point where I just told the cooks, just give it to them.
Oh, yeah, we're not gonna divide it, deny anyone food, certainly.
Yeah. The only other real, large decrease, I mean, we all of those departments had large decreases. But the only other large decrease, another one that would jump off the page is that operation of maintenance and plan. So operations. The reason that's gonna go down so much is, one, we've done a lot of bond work, so, it's not to say that we don't have more work to do, we definitely do. But contracted services, as a result, went down a significant amount. Utilities actually went down some too, just due to the fact that we always made sure that we had extra money in utilities. The state kind of had us always over budget, and we kind of cut back on over budgeting there a little bit. Not to mention the fact things like we bid out the trash service, and that went down. And then, normally we have an amount built in to buy vehicles in case because if a operations vehicle goes down, that's really an expensive tab. We didn't budget for that this year. So that was really the big one there. Also, just to try to extrapolate any kind of funds that we had, the state requires us to carry a reserve fund between 3 and 5% of revenues. I had carried it closer to 5 in the past few years. This year it's 3.5%. That's that reserve fund that's going down from 4 to 3 million.
And before he moves on, I do want to commend Steve because he is very conscientious in making sure that that's a healthy carryover
Yeah.
in case we ever get stuck into a position where the sky is falling, which has happened in the past, and we
Sure.
were able to address those situations. So, thank you, Steve. Great
Sure,
job.
thank you. Yeah, carryover is a big deal because, it's certainly not something that you can increase salaries on because it's not a set number from year to year. You need a consistent revenue to increase salaries or something like that. But, when we've had these bigger projects, when we've had the bond work going through and we've wanted to add to the bond work, adding to the permanent improvement fund, that's important to keep a healthy permanent improvement fund. So that's, that carryover is essential for that.
Well, this year it's scary not knowing what the federal
Yeah.
support's going to be.
100%.
I mean, technically, the reserve, should we really hit the wall with the Federal Reserve, is still short.
Yeah,
Although I don't think we won't get anything.
no.
But
Hopefully, if we do lose, it's more of a gradual loss than all at once. That's what I'm hoping. So, if you want to turn, so that's the general fund. And it breaks it down into more detail the farther that you go, based on those departments. Now, the departments, the detail that's in there, that's all kind of set by the state. I don't have a ton of leeway on what I can add in. So, you're going to see a lot of repeat in the detail, with salaries, and then health insurance, and then Social Security, retirement, workers' comp.
If I could just jump in for a
Sure.
second. If you look down on that page, it says step 7, instructional improvement.
Yep.
So just to let the board know, we must adopt textbooks every year. It's on a 6-year cycle. And that is where that money comes from. So it's kind of stuck there, but we also utilize that fund, step 7, for technology. Since we are now a one-to-one county, of course, that's gonna cost a little extra money. So between textbook adoptions and technology, hardware and software, that's where that line comes in.
Where does it say step 7?
Step
Oh,
7
you're
is
still
at the bottom
back
of the.
on
Yeah, yeah, sorry.
I thought
Kind of
we
want to
went-
just take a minute to explain what
thought we
what that piece
yeah.
of the step is and what our requirement is. And if we were to write a waiver, which I think we are writing a waiver for something, I think this year is pre-K and social studies. And I think we were looking to write a waiver in social studies, but because of where we are, we thought that might be a way to hold on this year. We would then have to tack that on to next year's adoption. So I don't know if I don't think next year's a big year, like reading and math. Reading and math are very robust when it comes to cost. But we're taking a look at all of that as well. Just wanted to let you know, just highlights that step 7. I know Patrick, Dr. Riddle gets a lot of his funding comes out of that step 7, when it used to be a lot higher.
Yeah, for the, at this point in time, it's just those devices, like the student devices.
And to piggyback off of both what Dr. Riddle and Dr. Miller said, Step 7 has now turned, I've mentioned this when you all have approved the Step 7A budget. It's now turned to be general funds. It's still something we have to separate out, but, you know, at the end of the year, it's something that can flow into our carryover. Step 7 does fund 4 service personnel and 2 professional personnel, in technology and textbooks, as Dr. Miller said. So, you know, it's something that we've helped to help our carryover in the past couple of years because we've had ESSER funds. That's the one other glaring weakness from our budget here, is that we have no ESSER funds this year. We've had it for the past, you know, since 2020, some sort of ESSER funding. So a lot of the one-to-one technology has been paid out of those ESSER funds in the past. Actually, all of it has. So now we're going to be, we've got a good handle on it. We've got a good plan to help use Step 7A money to help fund those one-to-one devices. This year, we actually, we had talked years ago that the gas and oil money that we received, those bonuses and the checks that I get every month, was going to help fund technology. That was one of the things that I separate that out in WEVIS every year, and we actually used that money this year to pay for our one-to-one devices. Dr. Riddle actually just put in the PO just the other day, and to the tune of half $500,000.
That's
But
not
we,
true.
but,
80,000.
Yeah.
Totally not
Those are
true.
Chromebooks.
yeah. So, but I mean, we have other sources that we can get that, but it's all gonna be built in here rather than that outside ESSER, line item that we used to have.
Well, so with the ESSER money, one of the regulations attached to that was that it couldn't be things that were new to our budget, right? It had to be things that we were already doing.
There were certain times that we were able to,
We could kind of massage that a little bit.
no, not massage, but supplant, because the
Supplant.
the phrase is always you can supplement, you can't supplant. Well, that changed under ESSER. If there were certain things that you could supplant.
Okay.
Because of course, you know, we use that for HVAC funding, which, you know, that was not part of the budget originally. So, you know, ESSER was really tough because we started off with one set of rules, then ESSER 2 came in and it was a different set of rules, and then ESSER 3 came in and it was a different set of rules, and then in the middle of it all, they all changed.
Yeah.
So, you know, after we had spent money, it changed.
And we had a very clean audit.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I mean, you guys know that the independent audit was great, and then we've had state ESSER audits as well, and those have come back great too.
Yeah,
So,
no, you've done
Have we had any
an
federal ESSER?
amazing job.
what's that?
Will the feds come in and look at the ESSER funds?
They do. I don't believe they do. I think it's a state level, and then the state lifts everything that we do up to the federal level, and the feds basically audit the state. So I don't think that we're actually gonna have federal agents, or, geez, I don't even know who would come in at this point because it'd be through the Department of Education, and
Do you know what the statute of limitations is?
I do not. I do not. But I mean, hey, that's not something, you know.
Always thinking of an angle, Dave.
You know, Ohio County.
I want to look in the rearview mirror.
No, Ohio County is, we're not worried about that. We know that we did things correctly.
So I guess
We're not Upshur County.
just a real quick follow-up to my question is, so if we were, like, the one-to-one stuff was in our budget prior to COVID and the ESSER funding. So are we able to look back and see, you know, what we were spending on it before, and have we increased it in a way that we can bring it back down to pre-ESSER funding numbers?
I don't know that we could necessarily bring it back down because, one-to-one is one-to-one. So, I mean, I can look back and see what was coming out of our general funds, but it's not gonna be, you know, we just use then ESSER funds to help. So, you know, those dollars that were in the general fund then were able to help. I mean, 500,000 is a lot, but it's not a lot in 89 million.
Right.
Or 83 now. We were able to use that to help Permanent Improvement Fund, to help, you know, other projects. I mean, you know, the bond, the 27 million from the SBA and the 42 from the bond were great, but I mean, you know, of course, we added along the way. I mean, we all, you know, you and Mr. Croft were, you know, in the thick of that. So, you know, we know that we've added a little bit, so.
Oh, I recall.
Yeah, sure, sure.
I will never forget.
Sure, sure.
I had a quick question too.
Yeah, yes, sir.
To digress a little bit, to go
Sure.
back to step 7. When we're looking, and Patrick, you can advise too, does it look like we're moving away from the hard copy text series and more to electronic?
Where appropriately, I mean, we're not going to give a kindergarten child, I mean, they're still gonna need books.
Yeah.
And we still purchase supplemental materials, not supplemental materials, consumer.
Consumable.
Yes,
Yeah.
that still takes place, because we know how valuable that is, especially in those elementary grades. Which we struggle internally with, like, is the cost benefit whenever these kids are learning phonics and phonemes and highlighting, and, I mean, when it comes down to it, we are still trying to do best practices within our budget.
I hope we don't take books out of the kids' hands.
Right.
That's kind of where I was going, Dave.
Yeah, especially in that elementary and
Yeah.
middle, yes.
Oh, yeah.
No.
I mean, screen time is bad, right? Like,
What's that?
I said screen time is bad. We know this at all ages, so
Yeah.
we need to balance that.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of, does it look like the elementary's really gonna kind of stay more like it is now? And maybe secondary will be moving more to the electronic? Is that something, and is that more cost efficient?
I don't think we're making any adjustments right now that's gonna have a negative impact on our curriculum.
Okay, good.
We are maintaining where we are, we're utilizing best practices, especially where we know that's very valuable with our young ones, as well as our middle and high school kids where appropriate.
Good. Very good, thank you.
And Mr. Garber, to your comment, is it more cost effective? It is not. The e-textbooks are not more cost effective in
Right.
any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
The reason being is, you know, all the publishers have caught on
Right.
Yeah.
that
was
it's,
for a
you know, it was at one time, but now,
Yeah.
the other problem is you have to buy a
Again.
license. And they want to sell you a license for 5 years, and they say, well, it'll be a little bit less. Well, and Mr. Croft can probably attest to this, but we're not allowed to buy something on the front end that lasts for 5 years, because you're technically obligating future budgets. And the state legislature, despite Uriah Cummings, who's he's the head of the finance department at the Department of Education, has actually gone and not lobbied, but spoken with legislators to try to get that rule changed so that we can have this more cost-effective, route, instead of buying licenses 1 year at a time, which is really not cost-effective. And they won't listen to them. They will not take it up. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely not more cost-effective to go to the year. It's actually costing us more money. And, I mean, not to throw another county under the bus, but they're.
They'll do it. We'll call it County X.
County X will definitely buy that 5-year, and, they'll just deal with the repercussions. Unfortunately, you're stuck with me, they won't do it.
Yeah, one quick question, Steve.
Yeah,
Under step 7, the
Yep.
staff development councils and faculty senate.
Yep.
I mean, there's $250,000 sitting there. Is that mandated?
It is.
Is it formula-based?
the staff councils are 1% of 1% of step 1 and step 2.
Okay.
The faculty senate we get a number, it's been 160,000 that comes straight from the state. Now, we do supplement that. So we supplement to the tune of about $65,000, to make sure that, our staff gets a little more than the $300 in faculty senate money. I think it's up to I think we give them an extra 100 straight to them, and then 100 straight to the faculty senate.
So,
And then $25 to,
To maybe explain that further, so teachers that
Yeah.
purchase items for their classroom, they become property of that classroom, but they may need, whatever that item is they need that they're utilizing
Yep.
to supplement, then that becomes property of Lehigh County and its days. But the teacher has the ability to purchase those things outside of the classroom, and then the state gives them X amount of dollars, and then the county supplements and adds to it. The same holds true for our service personnel. They also receive the money to be used in something in their job.
As a footnote to what Dr. Miller said, the faculty senate can also vote to give partial of their monies they receive to the faculty senate in case they want to buy something.
A computer program
Yeah, computer
that would have an
program.
impact on the whole school. So, or if there's something out there that they want to add into their innovative makerspace, they could vote to say, yes, I'll give back my money and we'd like to use it on X. But the teacher, service personnel controls how that money is spent.
Is that the service personnel get the same amount as the teacher?
No, they get a $25 reimbursement, and that's from Ohio County. They don't, that's not built into the state
Okay, that's
aid
just something we
formula.
do as a county.
Yeah, 160,000 is from the state, and it's $300 that a teacher can go out and buy the Stockton Rentalship, whatever, and then they get reimbursed, and then we supplement the rest, so.
It must meet the criteria, obviously, the principal signs off on all the purchases, it must meet the criteria of what the money's for. They can't just go buy bubble gum, you know, they have to.
And as Dr. Miller said, it then becomes property of the classroom. When you buy something, it is for the classroom. So if you buy a chair and you're at Madison and then you decide to take a job at Middle Creek, that chair has to stay there. Yeah, so yeah.
Maybe a dish towel, they want special towels, or they
Sure.
want special something if you're a cook, or.
Yeah. So after that, like I said, it's a bunch of detail. We could get into the weeds if you have questions, but for my overall summary, I won't get into the weeds. Mr. Croft, your question earlier, I'm sorry, I was a little bit off on the Title I. Title I funding's $2 million. IDEA is 1.7, so I mean, that's 3.7. I mean, but $4 million easily of that $4.7 million budget was federal funding.
Can you, we repeat that, Stephen? Title I is 2 million, what's IDEA?
1.7. So then, I don't
Does
think
anybody have questions about that piece?
Yeah.
'Cause in case.
So that's currently what we have, or that's what we've had in the previous budget?
in the
At
current
those
one.
amounts?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, correct, yep. Okay, so if you, I don't think I have page numbers on the budget, I apologize for that, but if you flip back to almost the last page before you hit those card stock pages, so that's, what I just went over is our general fund. We have 4 other funds now, well, technically 2 other funds, but we had 4 other funds last year. We had the debt service, the bond construction, the permanent improvement, and then the ESSER fund. So bond construction, we've spent 42.2 million, that is done now. ESSER funding has expired, so we do not have any more ESSER funding, so the only 2 other funds that I have to budget for are the debt service and the permanent improvement. Debt service, you don't really have a whole lot of say over, because that goes towards paying our bond funds, paying off our bond funds that we have to budget, so that's all kind of set in stone there.
Can we refi any of that?
What's that?
Can we refinance any of that?
I think that we can, but considering the percent that we have,
So the interest rates would be,
We're still low when we get it.
yeah, I don't think that'd be wise at this point.
so we're down to 172,000 in our bonds. How much money did you
That was
spend?
that was last year. We were down to 172 last year. We're down to, we don't have any left now.
So we spent $42 million, plus another 27 million from SBA.
All paid, and
10 million from ESSER.
yeah,
At least.
done, energy savings loans, all spent, paid, well, energy savings loans are still being paid, but,
We did everything we said we'd do.
yes.
And more.
yes,
So
and,
that's over 100 million total.
yeah, yes, and done so as good stewards of taxpayer money, so.
Oh, you gotta say that one more time.
We were absolutely good stewards of taxpayer money.
Absolutely.
So, so the big, so then, the only other thing that we have there is the permanent improvement fund, which, currently we have, the budget is $3.3 million. Right now, we've got around $4 million in the account. We're using that to pay off the last of the bond projects, because of course Elm Grove's still going. We got a little bit going on Middle Creek. We decided to put on that roof at Wheeling Middle. So, I mean, it's within the bond project, it's just not being paid for bond funds. Mr. Croft, you may see the last SBA payment is either this paid bills or the next paid bills, and that will be the last from the it was $18 million grant, so 27 in total. We have officially spent all of the SBA money now. So, you know.
More importantly, it's been reimbursed.
Correct, it's been reimbursed as well. The permanent improvement fund can only be used on exactly what it says, improvements to our facilities, capital projects, you know, that sort of thing. We can't use that for salaries. The other trick is, once the money is in there, it cannot be put back into the general fund. It has to be spent on that project, or a project.
Has David Crum put forth any requests for the next year on things that need to be improved?
Not a whole lot. I think he mentioned possibly something at Ritchie, a floor or a wall or something.
Just don't say swimming pool.
Not swimming. No, oh boy.
Words.
I don't think we have enough money in our budget for that one.
So if I remember correctly, that type of fund, whenever we had roof projects,
Yep.
they were on a rotation
Yes.
throughout the county, so that we were never stuck with doing 14 roof projects at one time. So that would be a place that money would draw down from.
So we're still on that type of schedule on
We-
no maintenance, we're trying to get on a schedule of
Yes.
whether it's roofing, HVAC,
Yes.
paving, so
Yes.
that we have some consistency year to year on what those expenditures will
Yeah.
be.
We don't have to go out for another $27 million
And the
bond.
important thing too, it's diversified, which I like personally, that you're spreading it around. Different schools get an improvement.
Well, that was a lot that was behind whenever we went for the bond. We wanted to make sure that we did something in each one of the buildings, but this permanent improvement, we want to make sure that that's robust enough that when you need a roof, we're on a regular schedule to address that.
Right, and we're looking out ahead to say,
Yes.
okay, these roofs in these buildings have a 10-year lifespan.
Yes.
And we're budgeting it all that, okay.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that was when we were doing some of the roofs on the bond project. You know, I think a couple of them were like the 25-year roofs, and a couple
Okay.
were the 30-year roofs, just to
For
be
that
sure that,
reason.
you know, yeah, we didn't want everything coming up at once.
Right, that's the
Not-
thing, with the way we had to deal with all of this deferred maintenance all at once,
Yeah.
then, you know, we're gonna get this big chunk again.
Absolutely,
So-
absolutely. So, that's all I've got for the overview. Sorry that it took so long.
No.
I don't know what other questions you might have.
A
Explanations.
couple of things I think it makes sense to highlight here, because the numbers are critical, so thank you for putting those. But what the numbers don't tell you is putting things in perspective. So as I mentioned a minute ago, the total revenue decrease was 6.16%. And I think it's worth highlighting that, you know, the general administration, you know, that reduction was 16%. So I think, you know, the efforts of Dr. Miller and you, Steve, are good at spreading the reductions throughout our footprint and not focusing it on any one area.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Well, it's not it's not an easy task you've had since those numbers initially were dropped on the property taxes. So, and nobody wants to have less supplies. We don't want to have less employees. And then I do have some other questions, but Andy, did you have a question before I move on?
Yes, sir.
So, you know, we had a visit from the association at our last board meeting asking for a 5% raise. How does that fit in? Are we still, you know, 1% raise is gonna cost us $1 million, you know, across the board?
Yeah, the rule of thumb was always $1,000 raise was going to equal $1 million in costs. That was always the rule of thumb. I mean, it was just a general, gets you close sort of number. You know, I think when I quickly did out some numbers as the association was talking, I think every percent point was gonna be like $500,000, something in that neck of the woods. So, I mean, 5% was gonna be almost $3 million in the end. And so I think maybe a percent was like 600,000, something like that. Yeah, it's, it would be, 5% would be,
Difficult right now, especially with the uncertainty of the federal money, and we still don't know what's gonna happen with PEIA.
don't know what's gonna happen with PEIA, and I don't know where the taxes are going, the tax revenue is going next year. I don't have a sense. I've heard it go both ways. I've heard that it's definitely not gonna go back up to where it was last year, or current year. That's definitely not going to happen. It may go up small, it may come back down another year. I don't think we're gonna have the significant drop again, like this year, but I'm completely uncertain. I have, anything that I say would just be pure guess, so.
Well, we don't want to speculate.
Exactly.
At this point. I just wanted to get us, myself and the rest of the board, really what impact a 5%
Yep.
would have. And I think, at least in my thinking is we're half-baked right now because we don't know what the federal is going to do. We don't know what the state's going to do with PEIA. I think we're going to have to visit that when that begins to gel. And, and maybe by then we'll have, the tea leaves will be a little more clear on what next year is going to provide as far as the tax base.
Yeah.
You indicated that you thought you might know more about the federal funding in July. Is that that's just speculation as well, or is there?
They mentioned the state said that they may have an update in July.
Okay.
But the problem is that this budget has to be passed by May 30th at the latest, which you guys have to pass it, so May 27th is our kind of drop dead date, so that we have to have it passed. That comes along with salary schedules too, so. I don't know that this is super related to what Mr. Croft was asking, but just so that you guys are aware of how that state aid number, which is of course the big driver for state aid relates. But our it's based on the 2025 second month head count, which was 4,719 students. That then turns into, for every 1,000 students, we are allowed 72.3 professional personnel.
What's that number?
Yeah, can you repeat all that?
72.3
For every 1,000 students,
for
we
every
get
1,000 students.
we get what?
That we get 72.3 allowed professional personnel, and that is based on the state minimum. So, of course, Ohio County has given raises throughout local raises throughout the year that it does not pay for those local raises. Beyond that, it also pays for 53.79 service personnel. Now that number has gone up due to the Third Grade Success Act. This is the last year for that. That's the one place where we added personnel was in service for that secondary, the regular and secondary education because of the Third Grade Success Act.
So
But the state pays for that, right? The state gives additional supplement for that?
Well, they give us extra personnel, so that number last year was like 50.79,
Yeah.
this year it's 53. And again, they give it at a service personnel minimum salary. Of course, ours is more than that, so we don't get the whole thing. It was a mandate that they
Yeah.
partially funded, was not all the way. And then, Ms. Nolte and I have brought to you that one of those third grade one person in each grade level was a professional. Is it still? Yeah. So.
Yeah, but this year, the state legislature did allow for not having to fully staff the second and third grades. If you do have a professional in one of those positions, they
Okay.
can cover 2 classes.
Okay.
And so next year, when we post
Yeah.
those third grade positions, that we'll be decreasing them by 1.
So that's an interventionist, so an interventionist would specialize math, reading, and that would be the professional person. But according to the Third Grade Success Act, it could be an aide in those positions. So I think we have an interventionist at each grade level, so now we can plug
No,
in.
we have an interventionist for school that kind of manages.
That's what I meant.
it.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, we have one interventionist that manages all of the aides and the small groups as they divide.
Data
into-
collection.
Yeah.
So the state told us we had to increase our, the aides in the classroom, or the people in the classroom, and it
Correct.
can be an aide, or it
It
can
could-
be a professional.
Yeah, it could be anything, and we, in our original plan, just because it becomes so burdensome
Yeah.
for our regular grade level teachers to do that, so that we have one person that
I remember that.
plays that out. But this year, they did go back and refine it so that we don't have to, they're kind of giving us a 2-for-1 if we have a professional, so that works well with our plan.
I just have a couple quick comments. First of all, I'd hate to be the .3 person, I don't know how we hire a third person, but anyway. As far as our enrollment for next year, Ms. Nolte, we had the kindergarten registration already, correct? What's the projection for next year's enrollment?
We had a really low preschool class this year, so we are down in our kindergarten numbers. That's why we've been kind of doing the big push. That's why we moved pre-K to go to 5 days, so that we can capture those kids then to, get them into our system. But we're down, our kindergartens are down.
So basically, our enrollment's going to drop from the 4,719.
Possibly, but I
Yeah,
believe
possibly, yeah.
our pre-K numbers are up a little bit. And I
Right.
can tell you, we are doing a lot of internal work with contacting families. Our seventh graders are visiting Park so that they could see what are the opportunities at Park as a seventh grader. Karen's done an outstanding job of communicating what's going on in our schools. So we are doing everything we can to expose people to the things we have to offer in High County.
And you're doing a wonderful job of that, I may add.
The-
But, based upon the PR that we're doing, I hope the community sees the quality of education that we're giving our students in the High County schools. And it's important for the public out there to know that we are very, very concerned for their kids. And we want to give them the best education that they can possibly have. And we're working hard to do that.
Mr. Gerber, and to your point on enrollment, you know, that $2.5 million that state aid went up because of the decrease in tax revenue is fantastic. But it would have been even better had enrollment stayed stable. So, yeah.
Well, and the other thing that the governor had mentioned when he was in Wheeling on his 100-day discussion, he talked about a special session not only addressing PEIA, but the state aid formula.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's another unknown for us as we try to figure this out.
100%.
Just so it
100%.
doesn't get worse.
Yeah, well.
Mess it up even more.
Yeah, well, there's.
Good point, Dave, right.
So just to let the board know where we are, so that there's no confusion, we have looked closely at enrollment. We will be down 5 teachers in our kindergarten and 5 aides, 3 federal programs, and 5 positions at Wheeling Park High School through attrition. So we're trying to move through attrition to squeeze some of those people without squeezing programs.
Can you
So-
just, I'm sorry, 5 teachers at the kindergarten level only?
Yes,
Okay,
5 aides.
okay.
3 federal programs in our middle schools, and 5 positions at Wheeling Park High School through attrition. So we are monitoring the enrollment very closely, and hopefully our numbers go back up and we're good.
We're working on it.
But we're not just slashing and cutting, we're just right-sizing the organization.
To comment one more time, when I looked through this entire budget thing just now, I saw a lot of responsible cuts. I don't know if cuts is the right word, responsible budgeting, I'll call it, where we have decreased some of the things that we've done before, but it's done in a responsible manner. So, again, kudos to you, Steve.
Thank you.
And to you, Dr. Miller, for looking at these things in a way that's, still keep us being very effective in what we do.
And I'd like to add, and I agree with Andy's comment, that if there are if there are teachers, and within those schools, there are certain things, maybe it's the consumables or other supplies that just didn't make the cut, bring that to the attention of the principal back to Dr. Miller, to Steve, and let's talk about it at the foundation. We have an additional resource, the High County Schools Foundation. We can raise money to cover those costs. So there are other avenues other than this budget in front of us, if it's something that is needed. So
Thank you.
that's out there.
So Steve, we will have to pass a budget at our next meeting.
We will.
And then we'll find out more information after that fact.
That makes a lot of sense.
What's your plan?
Wow, that's you couldn't have put that
That's loaded.
any better, Miss Adderhall. Yeah, I do as much forward thinking as I can when it
Yeah.
comes to the budget, as I possibly can. So, I try to keep, I don't want to say I keep money back, that's not the case, but, we try to make sure that we have reserves. So then that way, if God forbid, the Title I budget gets slashed at the federal level, it may be something we may have to look at in the future, but the last thing that we want to do is say, okay, well, next FY '27 at this point, FY '27, we have to lose all of our title. Like, that's absolutely what we don't want. The last thing that any of us want to
That
do
would
are
be
lose
devastating.
programs.
That's just an
So-
example.
Yes,
It's
just,
not happening.
yes, example.
I know that's not
Yeah.
happening, yeah,
Yeah.
I understand that,
Yeah,
I'm just
but
wondering, like,
that's the-
so your, like, larger reserves is one of the tools in your
Absolutely.
toolkit at this point to
Absolutely.
try to.
We have to have those, as large of a reserve as we
Yeah.
can possibly have.
Okay.
Um,
And are there other areas, we don't need to specify at all at
Yeah.
this point, but other areas that you kind of have in mind where we could cut a little bit?
Yeah, we did a lot of that this time. There were, I know Mr. Crum and I had some serious talks about, because it's kind of all hands on deck right now. Yes, there are areas, but my real hope is that, taxes are going to come back up, or or at the very least stay stable. I would love for the state to help out with PEIA. That would be huge. It would be great for enrollment to creep back up a little bit. That's kind of, it's tough with the Hope Scholarship, and it's tough with all, the virtual and, so it's definitely something that we're looking at, and Lord knows Dr. Miller's doing everything that she can to get that. So, just outside events are not making it easy on her. So, that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, okay. And I'll say, we go to these school board conferences, I'm on various
Yeah.
statewide school board association committees and talk to people from all over the state. And I'm very personally thankful for all that you do. You keep a close eye on this.
Oh,
And,
thank you.
We talk to people who don't have similar circumstances
Thank
to
you.
that. And so I feel like I, as a board member, have a certain level of comfort that
Thank you.
you're all over this. So thank you for your hard work.
No, thank you. Yeah. Dr. Miller will tell you, superintendent, 20 in the last 3 years? Is that?
20 new superintendents.
Yeah, treasurers are similar.
Yeah.
It's a very similar number for,
Yeah.
it's, so, but this is, it's my world, so it's
Thank
it's
you.
good. Yep, thank you.
Bernie, you have anything else for
I'm good, thank you.
Andy?
I just have one comment, and it's not related to the budget. It's related to the graduation ceremonies. I thought the graduation ceremonies were awesome. I think they were well done, well planned, short. Mr. Croft, excellent speech.
Thanks.
I can't say the same for myself, because when I gave mine, it was much too long, but you guys know who I am. Anyway, well done, excellent. I couldn't have been happier. The kids were awesome.
Thank you.
And you have anything?
Nothing further. Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for taking the time.
All right, guys, I think this was productive. The challenge is we just don't know, so it has to be a conservative budget right now.
Yep.
So I think you've helped us be at least a little nimble now, Steve, with, should we get news that's not great. So there being no other business before the board, this meeting is hereby adjourned at 8:57